My name is Claire. I'm 31 years old, and until last year I lived in Portland, Oregon. Back then, I thought my life was simple. I rented a small blue craftsman house on Northeast 28th, 2 bedrooms, white trim, a porch swing I found on Craigslist for $90. I worked as a project coordinator for a software firm downtown, handled schedules, contracts, and budgets. I liked control. I liked order. My world felt steady, predictable. Then one gray Friday in March, I stopped at a little corner store on Burnside after work. I was tired, drenched from the rain, and I grabbed a coffee and a scratch ticket for fun. The clerk, Ruth, a woman with tired eyes and a gravelly laugh, teased me. "Honey, nobody wins those things." I smiled and said maybe I'd be the exception. I didn't know how right I was. 2 days later, on a lazy Sunday morning, I sat at my kitchen table, my hair still damp from a shower, a bowl of oatmeal untouched beside me. I checked the numbers on my phone, then checked again. My hands began to shake. Every number lined up perfectly. I had just won $510,000. For a few seconds, my brain refused to believe it. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. I whispered the amount out loud, like saying it might make it real. Then I cried. Not soft, happy tears, ugly, overwhelmed ones. I wasn't rich, but for the first time in my life, I felt like I could breathe without worrying about rent, student loans, or my car breaking down. Once I collected myself, I made a list. I'd keep things quiet. I'd pay off my bills, buy a small house, and finally start my dream design business. I told myself I'd be smart, cautious. But blood is louder than logic. The first person I called was my best friend, Lily. She lived in Seattle, worked in theater, and was the only one who truly understood me. She squealed through the phone and said, "Don't tell anyone else. Promise me, Claire. Especially not your family." I laughed, but the warning sank in. My family and money never mixed well. Still, that evening, I found myself driving to my parents' house in Lake Oswego. My dad, Richard, answered the door in his golf polo, already holding a drink. My mom, Elaine, smiled wide, but her eyes flickered with curiosity. My older brother, Brian, strolled in minutes later, leather jacket on, acting like the world owed him applause. We sat in the living room, surrounded by Mom's expensive but outdated furniture. My heart thudded in my chest. "I have some news," I said. "I won the lottery." For a moment, silence filled the room. Then Brian laughed like I told a joke. When I told them the amount, $510,000, their faces changed. Dad's eyes gleamed. Mom's mouth twitched into a grin. Brian leaned forward. "That's great, sis. So, what's the plan? You gonna share it?" "Share it," I said. "It's my ticket. I have plans, pay off my lease, maybe buy a small place. Finally live without worrying." Dad patted my shoulder, his voice heavy with fake warmth. "Sweetheart, family helps family. You've lived in that rental long enough. You could invest in something that benefits all of us." Mom nodded. "Exactly. You know your brother's been working on that bar idea in Chicago. He needs backing. You could make it happen." The air grew thick. My fingers curled into fists. "This isn't an investment fund. It's my win. My money." Mom's smile cracked. "Claire, don't be selfish. We're your family." Brian smirked. "You never know how to manage money anyway." I felt my stomach twist. That night, I left early, my hands trembling on the steering wheel as I drove back to my rental. The rain smeared across the windshield like gray paint, and I promised myself I'd be smart from now on. When I got home, I called my accountant, Mark, and a lawyer named Henry the first found through a referral. Henry's voice was calm and professional. "First rule," he said, "don't announce anything. Second rule, don't store large cash at home. Third rule, set up a secure account, preferably a credit union, under your name only." By midnight, I had done exactly that. The next morning, the real $510,000 sat safely in a protected account. I even created a trust fund structure with Henry's help so no one could access it without my authorization. But I couldn't shake the feeling that my family would come for it. I knew them. They always had a way of turning guilt into control. So I did something clever, something a little petty, but necessary. My friend Lily, being in theater, kept stacks of realistic prop cash for her plays. She once joked that the fake bills looked so real, even banks would need to squint. I borrowed a box from her, a heavy one, filled with crisp, printed $100 bills that said for motion picture use only in tiny letters near the edge. I took that box home, wrapped it neatly in brown paper, and placed it in the top of my closet. Then I went about my life like everything was normal, like I hadn't just set a trap. For the next few days, I tried to convince myself I was being paranoid. Maybe they'd respect my boundaries this time. Maybe they'd let me live. But deep down, I knew better. I knew my mother's tone when she said, "Family helps family." I knew the way Brian's eyes followed my purse when I visited. I stood in my bedroom that night, staring at the fake money box, and whispered to myself, "Let's see who you really are." I didn't know then that this one small act would expose everything. It would tear open the illusion of family love I'd clung to for years. But part of me was ready to know the truth, ready to walk away if I had to. That night, I slept with a strange calm. Rain pattered against the window, soft and steady. Somewhere in Portland, the lottery office was already cutting a check. Somewhere else, my family was probably making plans for my future. But for the first time in my life, I had one secret they couldn't touch. The real money was mine, and the game was just beginning. 2 days after my visit to my parents' house, I came home from work feeling off. The air outside Portland had that damp, restless chill that warned of rain. My porch swing swayed gently, though there was no wind. My stomach tightened. I knew my home, every creak, every hum, and something didn't sound right. I stepped onto the porch, my shoes echoing faintly. The door was slightly open. My pulse jumped. I pushed it wider and froze. My mother stood in the middle of the living room, holding my spare key between 2 fingers like it was a trophy. My father was near the bookshelf, his hand buried in his pocket, pretending to look calm. And my brother Brian sat on the arm of my couch, flipping through a thick stack of what I knew were prop bills. He was grinning, but his eyes were sharp and cold. "What are you doing?" My voice came out lower than I expected. Mom didn't flinch. "We're helping you, Claire. You've been reckless. Money like that can destroy a person. Brian's taking charge of the investment. He's opening his bar in Chicago. It'll grow, and you'll get a return when you're ready." My heart pounded in my ears. "You broke into my house?" Dad's jaw tightened. "It's not breaking in if we have a key. We're your family." I stepped closer, trying to keep my hands from shaking. "You can't just take my money. It's not yours to manage." Mom's expression hardened. "Your attitude is the problem. You've always acted like you're above us. Maybe living alone will fix that." Brian chuckled, tossing the fake cash into the air. "Relax, sis. Family shares everything. You don't even know what to do with $500,000. I stared at the bills fluttering around him. The sight should have filled me with rage, but instead I felt a strange calm. My little test was working. They didn't even look closely enough to notice the small print, "For motion picture use only." I picked up my backpack from the chair, then walked toward the hall closet. "You're making a big mistake," I said. Dad's voice rose. "Don't be dramatic. We're saving you from yourself." "Saving me?" I turned to face them. "You mean stealing from me?" Mom's face flushed. "Watch your mouth, Claire. You should be grateful we're thinking ahead." Brian stood up, all swagger and smirk. "If you don't like it, go cry about it somewhere else. We've got it handled." Something inside me broke cleanly then, not in pain, but in realization. I saw them clearly for what they were. They didn't love me. They loved control. I slung my bag over my shoulder and picked up a folder from the table. It held my lease, my pay stubs, and every piece of paper proving that the money was mine alone. I paused at the doorway, meeting each of their eyes one by one. "You'll regret this," I said quietly. "Not because of karma, but because you'll finally see who you've been all along." Mom pointed toward the door. "Go. Fix your attitude." I walked out without another word. The rain had started to fall, cold and sharp, soaking through my jacket. I didn't look back. I caught the next bus to Union Station, my hands trembling around the strap of my bag. The house that had been my safe place no longer existed. At the station, the lights were harsh, but the air felt clean, like freedom. I texted Lily one line. They did it. I'm coming. She called within seconds. Get on the first train to Seattle. I'll handle the rest. When the train rolled north through the night, I pressed my forehead to the window. My reflection stared back, tired eyes, pale face, but a strange steadiness. I wasn't scared anymore.
Just done.
At King Street Station, Lily met me under the big clock. Her hair was tied in a messy bun, her coat too thin for the chill, but her smile was pure warmth. She pulled me into a hug. Good, she said. Let's start fresh. In her small apartment on Capitol Hill, she made tea and handed me a blanket. The city buzzed outside, distant and alive. I told her everything about the fake money, the break-in, the shouting. She listened without interrupting, nodding slowly. Then you won, she said finally. I frowned. What do you mean? They took the bait. You didn't lose anything real. You got proof. That night, I called Mark, my accountant, and Henry, my lawyer. Together, we spent 2 hours setting everything in motion. We created a living trust under my name only, structured so no one, not even a relative, could touch the funds. We flagged my name for any suspicious transfers. We moved the money into safe investments and a high-yield savings account. When I told Mark about the fake bills, he actually laughed. Claire, you left them a mirror, he said, and they showed you exactly who they are. By the time we hung up, exhaustion hit me like a wave. Lily offered her spare room, a small space with fairy lights and a plant on the window ledge. I fell asleep within minutes, wrapped in the sound of Seattle rain tapping against glass. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the blinds. I made coffee, stepped onto Lily's balcony, and took a deep breath. For the first time in weeks, the air didn't feel heavy. I called a few listings and found a short-term rental in Ballard, a one-bedroom apartment for $1,650 a month. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. When I moved in 2 days later, I bought a small second-hand desk and a soft gray rug. From my window, I could see a tall maple tree that would turn gold in autumn. I made tea each morning and watched the street below fill with life. Dog walkers, cyclists, kids on scooters. I started running again at Green Lake, breathing in cold air that cleared my head. My muscles burned, but it felt like reclaiming something I'd lost. Each night, I fell asleep without nightmares. Sometimes I'd think of the blue house back in Portland, and my chest would tighten. But then I'd remember the sound of my mother's voice, the look in Brian's eyes, and I'd know I'd made the right choice. They thought they'd stolen my future. What they didn't realize was that I had already built a new one, quiet, steady, and entirely mine. And though I didn't know it yet, their world was about to fall apart the moment they tried to cash in their stolen fortune. 3 weeks after I left Portland, I had almost settled into my new rhythm in Seattle. The mornings were calm, the sky always carried a light gray haze, and I had grown to love it. I'd wake up in my little Ballard apartment, brew coffee, and work from the small desk near my window. For the first time in my life, the air around me didn't feel heavy. I could hear my own thoughts, and none of them came from guilt or family expectations. Then one Thursday afternoon, my phone started buzzing. The screen showed Mom. I almost ignored it, but something in my gut said to pick up. Her voice burst through the line before I could even speak. Claire, what did you do? I blinked. What are you talking about? Your brother just tried to deposit your money, and the teller called the police, she shouted. They said the bills weren't real. They said they were prop money. What the hell did you pull? I bit my lip to keep from laughing. So the trap had finally snapped shut. I didn't pull anything, I said calmly. You did. Her voice shook. You tricked your own family? How could you? You broke into my home, Mom. You took something that wasn't yours. You called it helping. I call it theft. Then came another call waiting signal, Dad. I declined Mom's call and answer his. Claire, he said, his voice sharp. Enough of these games. The police report is a disaster. Brian is furious. You humiliated us. Did I? I asked, slicing an apple as I put the phone on speaker. Or did you humiliate yourselves? He huffed. We thought we were helping. Brian's investment plan. I interrupted. Brian's investment plan has failed every time. Remember his Seattle pop-up? He still owes me $4,800 from that. He sent apology texts and then ghosted me. So tell me, Dad, why would I give him $500,000? There was a long silence. I could almost hear him grinding his teeth. Finally, Mom took the phone back. We were going to put it to good use. You're not good with money, Claire. We were protecting you. I laughed softly. Protecting me? By stealing from me. Her voice cracked. You're being cruel. We're family. Family doesn't break locks or forge trust, I said. And you told me to fix my attitude and live alone. So I did. There was another pause, then Mom's tone shifted to something icy. Where are you? In Seattle, I said. In the United States. In my own life. And then I hung up. I turned off my phone for the rest of the day. I walked to the Ballard Locks, where boats rose and sank with the tide. Watching the water helped me breathe again. I didn't cry. I just felt an old ache loosen its grip. It was the ache of trying to make people love me, who never really did. That weekend, I did something for myself. I toured a small 2-bedroom house in West Seattle, a white clapper home with a red door and a fig tree in the front yard. It wasn't fancy, but it felt alive, warm, and safe. The price was $489,000. I ran the numbers with Mark, my accountant, who smiled through the phone. You can afford it easily, he said. You're finally building something that's yours. I put $200,000 down and signed the purchase agreement on a sunny Tuesday afternoon. When I held the keys, I took a photo of them resting in my palm, solid, shining, real. I named the house Hope Street, even though the street had another name. The first night I slept there, I lay on the hardwood floor with Lily beside me. We ate pepperoni pizza straight from the box, laughing about how bare the living room looked. Lily looked at me and said, You've built peace out of chaos. That's power. Over the next month, I built more than peace. I built a new business. I launched North Coast Projects, a small consulting service that helped tech teams communicate better with real people. My first client in Denver paid $12,000 for a 2-month contract. A week later, a Chicago firm signed me for another one. I furnished my new home piece by piece. A second-hand sofa Lily found online, a sturdy dining table, a plant with glossy leaves that thrived by the window. I set aside $50,000 for emergencies and another chunk for repairs. For the first time in years, I wasn't living from one paycheck to the next. I was living on my terms. But peace doesn't come without echoes. My parents started calling again, this time with calmer tones. Dad left a voicemail saying he wanted to talk things through. Mom texted pictures of family dinners, trying to guilt me back into their orbit. I ignored most of it. Then one afternoon, Dad called from a new number. I answered by mistake. Claire, he began softly, your mother hasn't slept in days. She's sick over this. Just tell us where the real money is, and we can start over. I sighed. There is no we, Dad. You burned that bridge. You didn't just steal from me. You proved you never respected me. His tone hardened. You'll regret this when you need your family. You always do. Before I could respond, I heard Henry's voice in my head, my lawyer's calm, even tone. When people try to weaponize guilt, stay factual. So I did. You took property that wasn't yours, I said evenly. You attempted to pass fake bills as real money. If you keep contacting me, I'll file for legal protection. Then I hung up. Henry followed up with a letter to my parents a few days later, explaining that I hadn't taken anything from them, that I hadn't broken any laws, and that the cash they stole was movie prop material. If they continued to harass me, there would be consequences. After that, the calls stopped. Seattle grew brighter. I found a rhythm that felt like home. Early mornings on the porch with coffee, quiet afternoons working on client proposals, and peaceful evenings cooking dinner while jazz played in the background. The house on Hope Street became my sanctuary. Sometimes, when the phone buzzed late at night, I'd glance at it and see my mother's name. I'd let it go to voicemail, where her voice would tremble with a mix of anger and longing. But I never called back. Some ties are too poisonous to retie. I had chosen my peace, and I wasn't going back. Spring arrived in Seattle with soft rain that made the air smell like new beginnings. The tulips in my front yard opened slowly, one by one, as if the earth itself was taking a cautious breath after a long storm. My little house on Hope Street felt alive now, warm, lived in, and filled with the quiet sounds of a woman finally at peace. Every morning, I brewed coffee in the kitchen while sunlight poured through the white curtains. I'd stand by the window, sipping from my blue mug, watching the neighborhood wake up. It was simple, but it was mine. After everything that happened, I realized I didn't need luxury. I just needed control over my own life. I spent my weekends painting the extra bedroom a soft green and planting herbs along the back steps. Mint, rosemary, and basil thrived in small clay pots. I even hung a frame in the hallway that held the small paper slip from the corner store in Portland, the one that read "Claim completed." It wasn't just a receipt. It was proof that I had claimed more than lottery money. I had claimed my independence. Lily visited often. She'd drive up from her theater in Seattle and stay for the weekend. We'd drink wine on the porch, talk about everything from work to childhood dreams, and laugh until our sides hurt. Sometimes she'd tease, "You know, Claire, you should thank your family. They practically handed you a new life." I'd smile at that, because, in a way, she was right. One rainy morning in May, my phone buzzed on the counter. The name on the screen froze me, Brian. I hadn't heard from him in months. The text read, "We need help." 3 words. No explanation. No apology. I stared at the message for a long time, thinking of all the nights I'd cried over the people who had stolen from me. I remember my father's anger, my mother's judgment, Brian's smirk as he tossed those fake bills in the air like he'd won something. But I also remembered that train ride out of Portland, the hum of freedom, the way the world outside the window looked wide and waiting. Without replying, I pressed delete. Later that day, I told Lily about the message. She only raised an eyebrow. "Don't open that door again," she said. "Some people don't want to change. They just want to drag you back into their storm." I nodded. Deep down, I already knew I wouldn't answer. To celebrate my peace, I booked a short trip to New York City, a place I'd always dreamed of visiting. I found a cozy hotel near Bryant Park for $210 a night and flew out that Friday. The city was loud, crowded, and alive in a way that reminded me how small my old world had been. I walked until my feet ached, through Central Park, down Fifth Avenue, past street musicians and food carts that smelled like roasted nuts and cinnamon. On my last night, I stood on a quiet side street, watching the lights reflect on the wet pavement. I promised 12-year-old me, the little girl who had always felt like she had to earn love, that I would never again beg for a seat at a table that didn't want me. I would build my own table. I would fill it with people who valued truth and kindness. And when necessary, I'd know when to close the door. When I came back to Seattle, I threw a small housewarming party. Nothing fancy, just neighbors and a few friends. Lily brought lemon bars, and my next-door neighbor, James, a retired nurse from London who'd moved to America 20 years ago, showed up with folding chairs and homemade cider. We set up in the small yard, the grass still damp from a morning drizzle. The laughter that night was light and real. We talked about everything: books, travel, memories. I caught myself smiling so much my cheeks hurt. As the sky turned pink, I looked at the people gathered around my little yard and realized this was what family was supposed to feel like. Safe, effortless, honest. After everyone left, I sat on the porch steps, a blanket wrapped around my shoulders. The maple tree at the curb rustled softly in the breeze. For a long time, I just listened. The sound of cars in the distance, the faint buzz of streetlights, the heartbeat of a life I had built from ashes. People often say that money changes you. I don't think it does. I think money simply exposes what was already there. My parents didn't become greedy because of the lottery. They always were. They just finally had an excuse to show it. As for me, I didn't become powerful because of the win. I became powerful because I finally stopped apologizing for wanting peace. The money was still there, safe, invested, growing quietly. I wasn't rich, but I was steady. After paying for the house and the repairs, I still had $210,000 left. North Coast Projects was thriving, and clients kept referring others to me. Every paycheck I earned felt like proof that I could stand on my own, that I never needed their validation again. Sometimes, I'd still get the occasional call from an unknown number. I never answered. I didn't need to. If it was them, they already knew what silence meant. It was my boundary, my peace. One Sunday morning, as sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, I brewed coffee and looked around my house. The painted walls, the herbs on the windowsill, the framed lottery slip. Everything around me had a story, and every story began the day I walked out that door in Portland and never looked back. I thought about how far I'd come, from the woman trembling on a train, clutching a backpack and a folder of documents, to the woman who now stood barefoot in her kitchen, humming along to the radio in a home she owned. I didn't win $500,000 that day. I won my life back. And when I step outside now, every sound, the wind, the rustling leaves, the distant hum of the city, feels like a quiet applause from the universe, whispering, "You did it." I didn't leave my family with hate. I left them with choice. They could keep chasing illusions, or they could learn to build something real. But either way, I was done carrying their weight. I closed the chapter of my old life, locked that door, and opened a new one filled with peace, light, and freedom. I chose my life. I chose this house. I chose the sound of my own footsteps on my own floor, and that, more than any lottery, was the greatest prize I could have ever won.